Good evening, classmates, as well as to our professor, Sir Dieter Jun Malaluan. We are the Group 2 and we are about to discuss the principles of learning theories as it relates to classroom practice. But before we officially start our discussion, we have 3 questions that needed to be answered by the end of this video. So for the first one, why are learning theories important? So for the second one, what are learning theories? And the third one, how do these educational theories influence learning? So without further ado, let's proceed to our first question, which is why are learning theories important? So in order for us to fully understand the importance of learning theories, we must first learn its definition. So learning theories describes how students process, receive, and retain knowledge during learning. So these learning theories can inform successful approaches for teaching and serve as a foundation for developing curriculums and lesson plans. So for example, a specific theory focuses on how students learn from observing. Students may hear another classmate talking about something new that they've learned in class, which then teaches that particular student something new even if it's not something that they tried themselves. With that, teachers can think of effective teaching strategies that are applicable to that theory. So later you will learn different learning theories and how you can apply those theories to your teaching. So did you understand the meaning of learning theories? Okay, so let's proceed. So now, let us answer why learning theories are important. First, an understanding of the learning theories can help us connect to all different kinds of students. We can focus on different learning styles to reach different students, creating teaching that focuses directly on student needs and aptitudes. So when we say aptitudes, it is the natural ability of the students. We need to remember that we have to depend our teaching to our students and think of ways on how they can learn in the easiest way possible. So for the second reason, learning theories are important because they both help us understand how knowledge is created and how people learn. These theories can be mainly assessed by how useful it is to educational practice. We need to understand learning theories in order for us to utilize them in our classroom. For example, there is a student that learns through social interaction, and fortunately, we knew a certain theory connected to that of how students learn, and in that way, we can think of ways on how to apply that theory to meet the student's need. So for the third and last reason, we make use of learning theories and the related pedagogic approaches and technologies to design, develop, and deliver effective teaching and learning practices. So as we design for learning, we need to be aware that our theoretical starting point will inform our teaching practices, choice of learning technologies, and the kind of activities that we provide to our students. So hopefully you will remember these reasons so that you can apply this to your teaching internship. So let's move forward to the second question.
Good day everyone. So today I am going to tackle one of the 5 learning theories, and that is the behaviorism learning theory. So every teacher knows that in a classroom setting, the most difficult to manage and work with is the behavior of their students. The behavior is usually hard to control, and it can be extra work to get them to pay attention and stop distracting others. As a future educator, this topic will help you learn classroom management techniques that will prepare you for difficult students. Additionally, it's extremely valuable to learn about learning theories and recognize that there are different methods and thoughts about how people learn. So what is behaviorism? Behaviorism or behavioral learning theory is a popular concept that focuses on how students learn. It focuses on the idea that all behaviors are learned through interaction with the environment. It says that the innate or inherited factors have very little influence on the behavior of the child or the student. So, the most common example of behaviorism is the positive reinforcement. For example, when a student gets a small reward when they get 100% on their spelling test, in the future, this student will work hard and study for their test in order to get the reward again. So behaviorism is also the key for educators because it impacts how students react and behave in the classroom. It suggests that teachers can directly influence how their students behave. It also helps teachers understand that a student's home environment and lifestyle can be impacting to their behavior. It helps them to see it objectively and work to assist with improvement. So how does behaviorism start? Behaviorism started as a reaction against introspective psychology in the 19th century, which relied heavily on first-person accounts. J.B. Watson and B.F. Skinner rejected introspective methods as being subjective and unquantifiable. These psychologists wanted to focus on observable, quantifiable events and behaviors. They said that science should take into account only observable indicators. They also believed that if they were given a group of infants, the way they were raised and the environment they put them in would be the ultimate determining factor for how they acted, not their parents nor their genes. So there is one most popular experiment in behaviorism. It is the Pavlov's dogs. In this experiment, they trained a group of dogs on how to behave in order to get a reward. They were trained according to their needs. So, a group of dogs would hear a bell ring and then they would be given food. After enough time, when the dog already practiced that kind of reinforcement, next time that they hear a bell rings, the dogs would salivate, expecting the food before they even saw it. Why? Because they already know that it is the time for them to eat. And that's how exactly what behaviorism argues. That the things we experience in our environment are the drivers of how we act. Now, let's proceed to the 5 behaviorist teaching strategies that teachers can implement in their classroom. First one is the drills. Teachers may practice skills using drill patterns to help students see the repetition and reinforcement that behavioral learning theory uses. Second one is the question and answer. Teachers can use a question as a stimulus and answer as a response. Gradually, getting harder questions will help students to learn behavioral learning theory. Then third one is the guided practice. Teachers can be directly involved in helping students go through problems to give them the reinforcement and behavior demonstration you want them to follow. Then fourth one is the regular review. Reviews are more important to behavioral learning theory. Why? Because going back over to material and giving positive reinforcement will help students retain information much better. Then last one is the positive reinforcement, which we talked a while ago. So behaviorist classrooms utilize positive reinforcement regularly. This can be in the form of verbal reinforcement and praise, reward systems, added privileges, and more. So while behaviorism is a great option for many teachers, there are some criticisms of this theory. Behaviorism is best for certain learning outcomes like foreign languages and math, but aren't as effective for analytical and comprehensive learning. Other critics of behavioral learning says that the theory doesn't encompass enough of human learning and behavior, and that it is not fully developed. Other theories have come forward to take behaviorism further, implying that there are many additional factors to consider when evaluating behavior. So, as a future educator, it is important to get the right degree and credentials to help us be prepared for success. It's also important to understand learning theories to be ready to take on students and the classroom. When you understand more about psychology and how students learn, you're much more likely to be successful as an educator. That's all. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. So, my topic is about cognitivist learning theory. So, cognitivist learning theory is developed as a reaction to behaviorism and gained credence in the 1950s. So, cognitivists objected to behaviorists because they felt that behaviorists thought learning was simply, which is not, because learning is continuous and learning is complex. So the difference between the behaviorism and cognitivism is a behaviorist uses feedback or reinforcement to modify behavior in the desired direction, while cognitivists make use of feedback or knowledge of results to guide and support accurate mental connections. So here's another difference between behaviorism and cognitivism. So here in behaviorism, the focus is what the learner does. It is the proper response to a given stimulus which is observable. Here in behaviorism, the learner is reactive, and the type of learning here is basic definitions and explanation of concepts, generalizations, and recalls. While in cognitivism, the focus is the processing of information or how the learner organizes new information within the pre-existing schema. So the type of learning here is higher level reasoning and information processing and emphasis on memory or organization. So as you can see, cognitivism is more complex in behaviorism. So let us define what is cognitivism. So cognitivism is a learning theory that focuses on how information is used, received, organized, stored, and retrieved by the mind. So it uses the mind as an information processor like a computer. So we can compare our mind to a computer because like computer, we receive information, we organize information, we stored information, and lastly, we processed an information. So like for example, in the classroom, the instruction should be organized, sequenced, and presented in a manner that is understandable and meaningful to the learner. So cognitivism is usually used in developing classroom lessons and helping students learn higher order thinking skills. So these are the common examples of cognitivisms that you can find in classroom. So starting the lesson with a hook to create interest. So this is basic in every classroom. So you can see this in every classroom because every teachers want their students to be engaged in the lesson. So they want to make the discussion engaging and add excitement to the learners. So number 2, activating prior knowledge by beginning a lesson with a review quiz. So this is also called the pretest. So we give a test or we give a pretest to activate the prior knowledge of the learners. So the next one is discussing previous lesson. So this is important because retention is important to create a schema to the mind of the learners. And lastly, using graphic organizers to help structure and relate content. So graphic organizers is important to visualize or to help the students visualize and construct ideas. So why this learning theory is very important? So it is very important because it allows educators to better understand the learning needs of the students. It also clarifies the process of the mind, and lastly, it helps to teach difficult subjects, especially math and science. So let's see how we can apply the principles of cognitivism in our teaching strategies. So the first one is asking students to reflect on their experience. The second one, helping students to find solutions to problems. The third one, encouraging discussions about what is being taught. The fourth one, helping students explore and understand how ideas are connected. Number 5, asking students to justify and explain their thinking. And lastly, number 6, using visualizations to improve students' understanding and recall. So that would be all for cognitivism learning theory.
Hi everyone! Allow me to discuss the topic that is assigned to me, which is constructivism. First, let's talk about what is constructivism. Constructivism is a learning theory which states that learners construct meaning only through active engagement. Constructivism shows that the learner builds upon his or her previous experience and understanding to construct a new understanding. At first, as a student, we are like an empty vessel, but as the days and time goes by, through the help of teachers, we are filled with knowledge. We are no longer an empty vessel because of the knowledge that we learn from them. They spoon feed us with the learnings that we need. Also, constructivism is a theory that will help us to do particular tasks, such as experiments or real world problem solving. It is because we are engaged or we have the engagement between our teachers, professors, or colleagues, so that we are filled by what we really need that we can use in our daily lives in the world. That is constructivism. Now, for better understanding or for better knowledge and some facts that can help us, let's move on to history of constructivism. Jean Piaget is known as one of the first theorists in constructivism. His theories indicate that humans create knowledge through the interaction between their experiences and ideas. But the constructivism theory is developed by Ernst von Glasersfeld in 1974. Even though Ernest von Glasersfeld developed the theory of constructivism, Jean Piaget, who is the Swiss psychologist considered as the father of constructivism, focuses on the cognitive development of children and adolescents. Now that you hear the history of constructivism, let's move on to its principles. And constructivism has 8 principles. First, knowledge is constructed. Meaning that knowledge is built upon other knowledge. Students take pieces and put them together in their own unique way, building something different than what another student will build. The student's previous knowledge, experiences, beliefs, and insights are all important foundations for their continued learning. Next principle, people learn to learn as they learn. This learning involves constructing meaning and systems of meaning. For example, if a student is learning the chronology of dates for a series of historical events, at the same time, they are learning the meaning of chronology. Each thing we learn gives us a better understanding of other things in the future. Number 3, learning is an active process. It involves sensory input to construct meaning. The learner needs to do something in order to learn. It's not a passive activity. Learners need to engage in the world, so they are actively involved in their own learning and development. You or we can't just sit and expect to be told things and learn. You need to engage in discussions, reading, activities, and others. Number 4, learning is a social activity. Learning is directly associated to our connection with other people. Our teachers, our family, or peers, and our acquaintances impact our learning. Educators are more likely to be successful as they understand that peer involvement is key in learning. Isolating learning isn't the best way to help students learn and grow together. Progressive education recognizes that social interaction is key to learning, and they use conversation, interaction, and group applications to help students retain their knowledge. Next is, learning is contextual. Isolated facts and theories separate from the rest of our lives. We learn in ways connected to things we already know, what we believe, and more. The things we learn and the points we tend to remember are connected to things going on around us. Number 6, knowledge is personal. It is because constructivism is based on your own experiences and beliefs, knowledge becomes a personal affair. Each person will have their own prior knowledge and experiences to bring to the table. So, the way and things people learn and gain from education will all be very different. Number 7, learning exists in the mind. Engaging the mind is key to successful learning. Learning needs to involve activities for minds, not just our hands. Mental experiences are needed for retaining knowledge. Last but not the least, which is the eighth principle of constructivism, motivation is key to learning. Students are unavailable to learn if they are unmotivated. Educators need to have ways to engage and motivate learners to activate their minds and help them be excited about education. Without motivation, it's difficult for learners to reach into past experience and make connections for new learning. Now that you have the eighth principle of constructivism, let's move on to types of constructivism, which are three. The first type of constructivism is cognitive constructivism, which focuses on the idea that learning should be related to the learner's stage of cognitive development. These methods work to help students in learning new information by connecting it to things they already know, enabling them to make modification in their existing intelligence to accommodate the new information. Cognitive constructivism comes from the work of Jean Piaget and his research on cognitive development in children. The second type of constructivism is social constructivism, which focuses on the collaborative nature of learning. Knowledge develops from how people interact with each other, their culture, and society at large. Students rely on others to help create their building blocks, and learning from others help them construct their own knowledge and reality. Social constructivism comes from Lev Vygotsky and is closely connected to cognitive constructivism, with the added element of societal and peer influence. The third, which is the last one, radical constructivism. Radical constructivism is very different from cognitive and social constructivism. It is because it is focuses on the idea that learners and the knowledge they construct tell us nothing real, only help us function in our environment. The overall idea it is because it focuses on the idea that learners and the knowledge they construct tell us nothing real, only help us function in our environment. The overall idea is that knowledge is invented, not discovered. The things we bring to the table make it impossible for us to have truth, only interpretations of knowledge. This theory was developed by Ernst von Glasersfeld in 1974. And that is what constructivism is.
Good day, everyone. And now, let's talk about the humanistic theory of learning, often called humanism. So it says that humanist learning theory approaches learning as a way to fulfill an individual's potential rather than meeting specific learning targets. So Maslow's research on the hierarchy of needs is a major concept within this theory, as it focuses on the whole person, specifically the cognitive and affective needs of the learner. So I believe that the humanistic learning theory, it focuses on the specific human capabilities, including creativity, personal growth, and a choice. The theory holds that self-actualization is the ultimate goal of the individual. Now, how does a humanistic learning theory affect students, teachers, and the learning process? Let's now proceed to the role of the learners and the role of the teachers. Role of the teachers. The teacher assumes the role of a coach or facilitator to assist the student in establishing and using their learning strategy to achieve their goal. Doing this means the teacher must be aware of the student's unique needs to be effective at supporting the student and acquiring the desired knowledge. So by understanding the student's need, the teacher can assist in designing the strategy to support the individual student's intellectual and emotional development. Next is the role of the student. Ideally, learning should be an active process where the student is engaged with the learning activities to acquire the knowledge specific to their situations. Since a major theme is the learner being the source of authority, so the learner determines what learning materials are used and how they will learn the material. So they can choose to read, listen to speeches, so watch movies or practice what they have learned through social interactions or by producing a specific output. So the learner also established the quantity of learning, as in how much do I need to learn about a specific subject. So, but making the correct or incorrect choice in their learning decisions rests with the student and not the teacher. So, this reinforces the student as the source of authority. That's all.
Hello and good evening. For the fifth learning theory, it is connectivism. Connectivism is a relatively new learning theory that suggests students should combine thoughts, theories, and general information in a useful manner. So it accepts that technology is a major part of the learning process and that our constant connectedness give us opportunities to make choices about our learning. So that is connectivism. So let us move on to the history of connectivism. So did you know that connectivism was first introduced in 2005 by the two theories, so George Siemens and Stephen Downes. The article of Siemens was published online in 2004. It was entitled Learning as a Network Creation, and Downes' articles, An Introduction to Connective Knowledge, was published the following year. Since then, both Siemens and Downes have continued to write and speak on the subject. Siemens focused on the social aspect of connectivism, and Downes focuses on non-human appliances and machine-based learning. So next is, what are the principles of connectivism? So connectivism builds on already established theories to propose that technology is changing what, how, and where we learn. Siemens and Downes identified 8 principles of connectivism. So these are: learning and knowledge rest in the diversity of opinions. Number 2, learning is a process of connecting. Number 3, learning may reside in non-human appliances. Number 4, learning is more critical than knowing. Number 5, nurturing and maintaining connections are needed for continual learning. 6. The ability to see connections between fields, ideas, and concepts is a core skill. 7. Accurate, up-to-date knowledge is the aim of all connectivist learning. And last is, decision-making is a learning process. Before these principles came on the scene, many theories positioned students solely as receivers of information. However, connectivism supports the theory that knowledge is distributed across networks, where connections and connectedness inform learning. Connectivism relies heavily on technology. So the first step to creating a connectivist classroom is to introduce more opportunities for digital learning. Here are more ways to incorporate connectivism in the classroom by the use of social media. One way teachers implement connectivism is through the use of classroom social media. For example, Twitter account can be used to share information. This helps boost class engagement. Next is gamification. It takes assignments and activities and puts them into a competitive game to make learning more of an interactive experience. So the third one is simulations. It engages students in deep learning that empowers understanding as opposed to surface learning that only requires memorization. Okay, to sum up, connectivism allows a community of people to legitimize what they're doing, so knowledge can be spread more quickly through multiple communities. And that's all.
Good evening, everyone. I am here today to discuss my part. My part would be, how do educational theories influence learning? Do you know how do educational theories influence learning? If yes, very good. But if no, I am here today to help you to know how do educational theories influence learning. So, before discussing my part, and in order for myself to know if you really understood and listened to the previous discussion, could you please tell me what are those educational theories? Anyone from the class? Yes, Myra Flor? Very good. So the first one was about behaviorism. So behaviorism can influence the learning of the students by anyone? Yes, Joanne? Very good. By having reinforcement. So I will give you an example on how does behaviorism can influence learning of the students. Like for example, if you study hard and your parents find out that you got a high grades, because of that, your parents give you money. So the money that you have received from your parents will serve as your motivation to study. So that's why the tendency here is you will study hard over and over again in order for yourself to get a high grade as always. So meaning the money that you have received from your parents will serve as your motivation to study. That is the example of motivation of positive reinforcement. Okay, now I will give you further information. I know that all of us will take our licensure examination for teachers someday. So this question may come out in the said examination. So who is the proponent of behaviorism? Do you know who is the proponent of behaviorism? Very good. So the proponent of behaviorism is John Watson. Next, what is the next educational theory? Anyone from the class? Yes, Adam? Very good. So the next one is about cognitivism. So how does cognitivism influence learning? Do you know how? Alright, so cognitivism influences the learning of the students by what? By receiving, organizing, storing, and at the same time retrieving information. So they use their mind as information processor. And again, this question may come up in the said examination or licensure examination for teachers. So who is the proponent of cognitivism? Or who is the proponent of cognitive development theory? Very good. So the proponent of cognitivism and cognitive development theory is Jean Piaget. So next, anyone from the class, what is the next? Yes, Nea? Very good. So the next one is constructivism. So how does constructivism influence learning? Do you know how? Very good. So constructivism influences learning by having prior knowledge or schema, experiences, and at the same time information. So those things used by the students to construct their own meaning and at the same time to construct their own learning. So again, who is the proponent of constructivism? Yes? Carla? Very good. So the proponent of constructivism is Lev Vygotsky. Miss Obsod, please stand up. What is the last educational theory? Very good. So the last educational theory is all about connectivism. So what is connectivism? And how does connectivism influence student learning? Okay, so connectivism in this theory, the learning of the students can be influenced by having connection, by forging connection. So what do you mean by forging connection? So when we say forging connection, it simply means that establishing connection with other people. So we can use our social media accounts to connect with people, with groups of people. So that's why it can thoroughly influence our learning. Okay, so who are the proponents of connectivism? So there are two people. So the first one is George Siemens. Then the second one is what? Stephen Downes. Okay, so those are the proponents of connectivism. George Siemens and Stephen Downes. Okay, next, anyone from the class, what is the next educational theory? Yes, Jubilee, you are raising your hand. Very good, so the next one is about humanism. Okay, Jubilee, please remain standing. What is humanism? Very good, so humanism is all about human. Because according in this theory, students students consider human as the subject of their study. So, if I were you, Jubilee, please have many friends in your life. Your friends can be a lawyer, can be a teacher, can be an attorney, can be a nurse, a doctor, and even a simple farmer who have been working in the field can be your friends. Because those people can have influences to you as a learner from their experiences. That's why always have many friends who have different walks of life. Okay, so when we say different walks of life, it simply means that those people have many experiences that can help you to learn something. Okay, now who are the key proponents of humanism? So the first one is Abraham Maslow, and the second one is James Frederick Taylor Bugental. Then the last one is Carl Rogers. So those are the key proponents of humanism. So for the last part of our discussion, so let us have an activity first. So teacher F is convinced that whenever a student performs desired activity, provided reinforcement, and soon the students will perform the behavior on his own. So on which principle is teacher F conviction based? So what would be your answer? Our answer is letter B, behaviorism. So for the second question, so these activities describe what learning modality. So we have here lecture, so we have here drill and practice, we have here rote learning, and at the same time multiple choice tests. So what would be your answer? Okay, so very good. So our answer here is cognitivism. So for the third question, we create our own knowledge of the world based on individual experiences. So what would be your answer? Our answer here would be constructivism. So for the fourth question, learning is self-directed learning via content source, people, groups within a network. So what would be your answer here? Very good. So our answer here is connectivism.